Welcome to SCAL6 My Favorite Things, Part 7, the first three properties panels. In this video, I will be covering my favorite options and settings for the first three properties panels, which are located along the right in SCAL. The names of these three panels and their primary purposes are: 1. The document panel. This is where you set up the properties of your project and can elect to show or hide various features. Number 2, the position and size panel, which is used to move, resize, align, rotate, and mirror any of the objects in your project. And then number 3, the fill and stroke panel, which is used to recolor vector objects, change the outline thickness and shape, and convert from solid to dashed lines. So let me now show you how useful some of these things can be. So starting with the document panel, one of the features that I really like is the show outlines only. And the reason for that is that, let's say I want to edit this image, all right? And I go to Object, Break Apart, so that I can, let's say I want to individually move some of these things, or let's say I want to convert this little shape right here to a perfect circle or something. When I go to Break Apart, you'll see that I lose the shapes. I don't see them any longer, and that's because it has broken them up into, let me turn on Show Outlines Only. Basically, all of these individual shapes have the same fill color as the outside. So now then, I won't be able to see it, but if I go to Show Outlines Only, then I can see these shapes and I can work with them. And let's say my only thing I want to do is just change this to a circle. I'll come over here and I'll just select the circle tool. Oops. Try that again. Hold down my Shift key, draw a circle. And now I can come up and lock that layer and then select the prior one and delete it, that shape. Then I can come back and select all and go to Object Merge. Okay, and then once I do that, oops, I didn't have that selected. Select all and go to Object Merge. I needed to unlock my circle. All right, and now then when I turn off Show Outlines Only, then I see, my design again. So that's something to remember, is that anytime you need to edit the shape, you're probably going to lose all of the individual shape. You don't lose them, you just can't see them because they all have the same fill color. So you can just go to Show Outlines Only. Just don't forget to then make sure that you have that turned off again, because if I don't, and let's say I come here and I try to import some clip art or something. So let's come over to the desktop and scroll down to some of my images. Select one, I click Open. Well, then I don't see my clip art, and that's because this is enabled. So if I turn that off, now then I can see my clip art again. And that comes up very often, that lots of users forget and leave that turned on, then they don't understand why they can't see their, whatever the raster image is. So now then I want to talk about a print and cut project and what's important on the document panel with regards to that. So let's say I've designed these stickers here, and I'm getting ready to print and cut them. And let's say I go, okay, I'm just ready to print and cut. So I go to File and I go to Print and I click on Print Registration Marks and off I go. And I get this window that comes up and it says can't print registration marks. Okay, if this ever happens to you, don't go ahead and print. Don't say, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I did everything right. It's not going to happen, okay? You might have one or two on there and the rest will be cut off or whatever. So just stop. Just always cancel. And what you need to do, what take advantage of on the document panel, are these two show settings right here. By the way, everything that's on this panel that says show this, show that, everything, none of this causes something to change in terms of the execution of a print or a cut or anything else, all right? These are just for your convenience for you to see things or not see things. So when I come over and I turn on show print margins and show reg marks, that doesn't change anything other than it provides me information. And in this case, it provides two very important pieces of information. One is that my design is not within the print boundaries of my printer settings. So I need to move this over. And by the way, when I'm currently, mentioning printer settings, it's always a good idea to go to File, Print Setup first, or Page Setup if you have a Mac. Click on that, and then make sure you have the correct printer selected, as well as whatever size paper that you want to have selected. And you can do some other things. Like for me, I always need to change my paper source from auto select, or most of the time, back to paper tray, because I tend to, my fancy papers always load from the rear rather than have them down in the cassette. So, do whatever you need to do, for your particular situation, but it's definitely always worth going to this window. So now then I have my my design over here, but I still have a problem with registration marks. And this is the reason I was getting that warning, is because these registration marks are not within the boundaries of my paper. And of course, this is the dotted line here is the actual printing boundaries that are set based on the margins that are set inside my printer settings. So I need to make sure these reg marks move. And of course and I wouldn't necessarily realize that if I didn't have this show reg marks. And of course, that's under cutter settings. And these are going to change these options change depending on what brand of cutter you're using. And then also some of the cutters now have these options here too, which are very handy because you can choose, which one of these you want. And of course, page bounds, I wouldn't want that in this situation because if I select page bounds and click on save, I still have a problem because this is my page. The white area is my page and I don't have it set. Now, what I tend to do for print and cuts is to change this to match whatever my printout happens to be. And so in this case, my printout, I may have turned these off and back on again. I like to have my mat size match my printout, but that's a personal choice. Again, it's not going to affect things as long as you're doing, you know what you're doing. You can do it either way, but for me, this just kind of, I don't know, just makes me kind of happy to have it this way. So, and then when I have this, I can come back here and change my settings to be based on page or even printout. Print bounds is kind of a safe way because now then it's going to be based on this dashed line. So if I come and do that, so now then I can see where they're okay. Now with some cutters, you wouldn't be able to use this, but if you're using, like a Caesar cutter or a SCAL6 or a Solo, you can have your printout images this close to the reg marks. So anyway, my point here is just that these two are so handy. Use them. Always use them. You can also see them under preview. Preview will also show you, if you come down here and turn on show print margins, then you can also see those and your print reg marks. You can see them in this window also. But I kind of like, since I'm designing here and this is where I'd actually be moving shapes around or whatever, I prefer to use them on the document panel. Okay, the next one is the position and size panel. And my favorite things on this particular panel are this little diagram up here. And what this little diagram shows you, like when I select this circle, right now the reference point it shows up here is in this top left corner of these 9 little dots, which refers to this position right here, okay? If I select this one, then it's referring to the center. And this over here tells you where it's at. So right now it's at 4.8 inches X, which means that it's 4.8 inches, and I can see that when I rest my cursor right here in the middle. See how it's really close to 5 up at the top? And then it's at 3.6 inches down. And again, I can see that over the little red marker over on the left-hand side. So that gives me that reference. Now, when would you use this? Well, if I wanted to cut this circle from the middle of the page, then I don't have to worry about using this diagram. I can just go to page and I can center. But let's say, for example, I want to cut this circle out and I want it to be exactly 1 inch from this edge and 1 inch above from the bottom. Well, because this is a 12 by 12 mat, then I can click this little reference point down here, this corner, and I need it to be 1 inch from either end, which means I want X to be 11 and I want Y to be 11. So you can move things exactly where you need them on this particular page area or the mat. Another favorite feature on the position and size panel are these nudge icons right here. When I was doing this musical scale, it was one of the trickier things I ever did in terms of getting things moved to exactly where I needed them. And so let me zoom in a little bit here. So what I found is that just being able to use the nudge icons was much better. If I tried to use the arrow key, it was like moving it too much. But I would get it up close to where I felt like it should be, and then I could just nudge it with these little buttons just a little bit, just to get them just where I wanted them. And so all these little things up here, I'd bring them in. I go, no, that's not quite right. Let me nudge it down a little bit, or a little higher, or a little to the left, or a little to the right, or whatever. So anytime you have a difficult time moving things, think about these nudge icons. I use them more than I thought I ever would. To change the distance that they move with each little tap, you can go under Edit Preferences, and here on the Edit tab, this is where the nudge distance is, and you can see my arrow key increment. I have it set to 0.1. If I try to make it smaller, it's going to drive me crazy trying to move something. It's like you really need the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds is to be able to have your arrow key be some X distance that you like, and your nudge key being much smaller. And so those are the numbers I currently have set. I don't even know if those are the defaults anymore or not, but I know that I did play around with them a lot until I kind of got them to where I felt like, yeah, that works well for me. So keep that in mind. So the next panel is the fill and stroke panel. And one of my favorite things on this panel is the stroke, having the ability to both change the color and change the width and have it different from the fill. So in my example over here, I've just typed out the letters Merry Christmas that I'm going to put onto a tag. It'd be like a print and cut project. And when I select just the Merry Christmas, you can see that it has a fill color of red and it has no stroke assigned at all. But if I want a slightly different look, then I can come over and let's say that we take this Merry Christmas and I give it a dark gray kind of stroke. And then again, I set the width. You can set the width really high, really low, whatever you want. And so I get that look, which is different. You can tell it just has a different feel about it. And then along the same line, I can just kind of really go for it with a totally different color. And this one I use green. So I'm picking up the red and green that are traditional Christmas colors. And again, in this case, the fill is still red. The stroke I've set to green and then set a thickness I want. Now, some people would say, well, what's the difference between just adding a shadow layer to that? Isn't it the same thing? Well, it's not, because I did that also. I wanted to show what it looks like if you just add like a regular shadow. And I'll zoom in. And again, here with this particular one, I have what I did is I have red with no stroke, and then I have a shadow layer of green that has a slight stroke, or I could even set it, I could set it to none and just have it a fill of green. But let's zooming in and looking at these two, you can tell, let me move these out of the way, you can tell that they're just not the same thing. It's, just a different look, right? So, I mean, I'm not putting anything down, with the shadow layer. It's great too. It's just that if you're going for something sort of different, well, then you can do, achieve that different by using the stroke to set sort of a shadow look to it, as opposed to just using the shadow layer. Also in my prior video, the one right before this one, I had shown that stroke can also be used to create a frame. So I'm just going to quickly revisit that one. You can just thicken that stroke up to, whatever size you want. And then when you go to path, stroke to path, you end up with something that you can actually cut out. So you end up, with a shape like this. And then you can also, you could weld shapes to the inside, just slightly overlapping that inner path. So that's of course the other use for this particular for the stroke function. Another use for the stroke function is for a print and cut application in which you'd like a little bit of room for error, and you'd like, in other words, you'd like a little bit of a print bleed. So to do that, I can take the cut layer for this particularly imported PNG file and give it a color, okay, and then increase that out a little bit. And then when I actually get ready to do the print and cut itself, you'll see that the cut line is in the middle of that stroke. And so that gives that extra little room for error, so you don't end up with any, white showing around your outside. You'll have that nice black outline showing for your image. So another favorite that is on the fill and stroke panel is something that was added for SCAL6, and that is the ability to select by color. And so, for example, over here in this group, I'm going to open up this group and I'll just select one of these items of the color, let's say the red that I want to select. And then on the fill and stroke panel, you now have this drop-down menu, and one of the options is same, select all, same fill. And when I do that, even though these are all inside grouped folders, I can actually select all of the red ones, and then I can group all of those together if I want to. So now then when I select this, I'm selecting just all of the red ones, and then, I can separately select the green or just move the red out of the way and then group the green, whatever's needed. So that was something, that was a big improvement. And I realize a lot of programs have that, but SCAL did not have that ability until version 6, which makes it probably worth the upgrade just to have that ability if you do a lot of designing and a lot of multiples and, things like this. Thank you for watching this video. The next one, Part 8, will cover my favorite settings and options for the remaining properties panels. Hope you'll make the time for it as well.